I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. I just have to get in the message, good evening from Poland. So good evening. My name is Liam and I'm the director of PCPSI. And I must say, I'm very excited tonight and very grateful to be joined by Deb Dana. Welcome, Deb.
It is so lovely to be with you, Liam.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
I think to start, it's really important to give a context to tonight's webinar. So about 6 months ago, I got this crazy idea. Well, I thought it was crazy anyway. I said, I'd love to spend a year with Deb Dana. And so I said, I was a bit apprehensive about saying it to you, Deb.
I know.
And we met up.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I had about 3 ideas and I said, Deb, I have 3 ideas and I have one that's absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So you said to me, give me the crazy idea first.
Exactly.
And the crazy idea was a year of Polyvagal, where we would have 12 webinars, 1 a month, and we'd have a series of integration webinars as well, where, you know, the whole idea was, and I think where the idea came from was we got a lot of feedback from our participants, from our customers over the years, that they really appreciate the webinars and the seminars, but that at times 2 days or maybe 4 evenings is not enough to integrate the material into their work.
Yeah.
So they said what they'd like is that they'd like a longer period where they come to the webinars, they get the information, they go back to their clinic and they start integrating.
Nice.
And of course, once they start integrating, then they start coming up with questions, start coming up with dilemmas, problems. And that's where the integration webinars come in then.
Right.
That, you know, that they have very specific questions, and we'll probably have at least 3 integration webinars. And one of the things we're hoping to do is to invite Stephen Porges on as well. And look, there's no guarantee he will come, but we'd love him to join us as well for one of the integration webinars. And so what we're trying to do, I suppose what the big goal is, Deb, is to form a community.
Yes.
It's a real coming together with everybody having a shared vision.
Yes.
So that's what we're really trying to do, and I'm really kind of excited.
Yeah.
But just back to tonight, I just have a few announcements before we get started. So anybody with any tech issues, what we would suggest is that you just, if you get cut off, that you just log back on again with the link provided. And if that doesn't work, Mary, hello Mary, Mary is on the email. So Mary's email is Mary, M-A-R-Y, @pcpsi.ie. And Mary will send you the link again and get you sorted. So send Mary an email if you have any problems. We'd encourage people to send in questions as soon as possible. And please use the Q&A function, which is at the end of the screen over at the right. I imagine at this stage, Deb, that people are very familiar with Zoom. We're all Zoom experts, but just
we are Zoom experts. Yes, we are.
Okay, someone's looking. So it's Mary, M-A-R-Y, @pcpsi.ie. And if anybody is interested in getting CPD cert for tonight's free webinar, you can purchase that. And Robert, and just want to say hello to Robert as well. Robert is our technical expert, and Robert is putting all this together, and I'm really kind of appreciative of Robert for his expertise. So Robert, you might post that link for the CPD cert in case anybody's interested. And so I just want to introduce you to Deb, and at this stage, Deb, it feels like you're a real kind of dear old friend.
I agree. I think we are family, aren't we, by now?
Absolutely. And for people that don't know, Deb I think, I could say, Deb, that you're an author, and I could say that you're a psychotherapist, and I could say 1,001 good things about you. But I
Mm,
think the most important thing that you've done is that you've created this really strong bridge
mm,
between Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory and what it looks like in
mm.
clinical practice. What it looks like, sitting across from another human being.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I want to go back to your saying I have this crazy idea, and I said, oh, so tell me that one first. And we never went any further than that, did we? Because that was like, oh, this feels so special to have a year to spend with a group of people and really create community, because that really is I think my passion and our purpose is to create community and create this polyvagal informed community, which is both the clinicians, the people in the helping profession who will sit across from their clients in new ways, but it's also, we human beings who will move through our lives in new ways and connect with our families, our friends, our colleagues in new ways. So for me, both, it's a both and we're going to be able to do over this year. So yeah.
Great. And the bonus for me, Deb, is that I get to spend a year with you.
We
My,
get to spend the year together.
my
I
wife
must say,
said,
I had a wonderful time creating the topics for each of the 12 months, and I was just reviewing it this afternoon in preparation for our conversation tonight, and I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. Because a lot of the material is new material from from my new book or from things I haven't published yet, things I want to try out. So, in some ways, perhaps this group will be polyvagal test pilots. I always love having test pilots, right? We can say,
absolutely.
oh, that worked well, or oh, no, that one needs a little work. So we'll play with a bunch of polyvagal experiences and really just dive in together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm,
And maybe to start tonight, Deb, I think, even before we go into, a brief overview of the polyvagal theory, one of the things I'm kind of interested in, why is understanding the polyvagal theory essential for caregiving? And not
mm.
not just therapists, but those in any caregiving capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And we could make caregiving into anybody who's in a relationship with someone, because we're in relationships, we're often offering care and receiving care, which is one of those principles of polyvagal theory, that co-regulation and reciprocity that is necessary for us to feel connected safely with another person. And I think what polyvagal theory does for us, and why it's so essential to know, is that it helps us understand how we're moving through life. And once we have gathered that information through this lens of the organizing principles, then it leads us on a journey to explore, what do we do with that information? So we can use polyvagal principles to then create practices that shape our system in the way that we want to shape. So we shape towards connection. Most of us have habitual patterns of protection, and our work is to find, how do I reshape those so that I can move towards connection safely and have more of that well-being in my life. So for anybody in the helping profession, yes, and for all curious human beings, right? Because we all have a nervous system, and our nervous system is directing our movement through life. So understanding it, those three organizing principles: hierarchy, neuroception, co-regulation, those are the guiding principles for everybody's life. The nervous system is the heart of our daily experience. So I think understanding it is essential for all of us, but it certainly is essential for being able to live a life of well-being. Steve puts three words together that I love: health, growth, and restoration. And when you can anchor in ventral, my word is anchor, anchor in ventral, then we have the benefit of being able to receive health, growth, and restoration. So, I think it behooves us to understand how to do that, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, so, and I love that we're going to do it in community, because the other thing is, we talked about reciprocity and the give and take of offering care, receiving care. Part of what helps that is community. And so
Mm.
we build community of people who are passionate about learning polyvagal theory and passionate about practicing, because part of this year is going to be, we do our monthly webinar, and then you go practice some things, right? And as we always say in the polyvagal world, the first nervous system you have to work with and get to know is your own. So,
Mm.
the work is going to be to um, come to the webinar, get some practices, and then practice here yourself, and then practice, with people around you and your clients certainly. But it's this broader application.
Absolutely, and I think we were talking earlier, Deb, and one of the things we were talking about is there's a lot going on in the world at the moment. There's a lot going on in America, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that seems to be happening is that we have these at least two groups, them and us.
Yeah.
And that I think that can happen in therapy as well, where the therapist or the caregiver sees the client as someone that's distressed and I'm okay, but the client is not okay. But
Mm-hmm.
what I really love about your work is that you put kind of high value on transparency, and transparency in relation to my own nervous system state.
Yeah.
And you know that instead of what we're trying to create, instead of kind of them and us, we're trying to create a we.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, them and us. I think in the clinical world, I think most of our training programs were sort of set up to be a client and clinician, of them and an us, right? And so when we begin to look through the lens of the nervous system, we know, oh, that nervous system is organized the same way mine is. It's acting in a different way at the moment, but I understand, because boy, I've been there too, right? So it's a, there's humility, I think, that comes from working this way, because we all know we are all prone to dysregulation,
Mm.
a common human experience. I also think the transparency around me owning what's happening in my nervous system is so important, because one of the organizing principles, neuroception, reminds us that even though I think I may be able to hide what's going on, my nervous system is broadcasting those cues to my client's nervous system, right? And my client's nervous system is listening and hearing them. My client may not be able to make sense of those cues, but their brain is going to make up a story. And so what I believe is that it's my responsibility both to regulate my own nervous system, but also to notice out loud explicitly with my client the moments when I'm dysregulated. Right. That's the piece that neuroception brings us, that these conversations are going on moment to moment. And we need to tune into them, listen to them, and then honor them. So, one of the things you talk about, the world right now, you and I are meeting, we're gathering on this day when, the US is in a state of waiting, right? That the election is over, the votes are being counted. It's a crazy time in my world. And I have to say that I'm glued to the TV, right? I turn it off for a while because I think, oh, it's too much, but I go right back. So, and I think there are many people in the world, not just in the US, but around the world, who are, sort of wondering what's going to happen. It's a time of unpredictability, which is often a cue of danger to our nervous systems, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So it's an unsettling time. So it's lovely. One of the things I will say, which gets us to co-regulation again, it is lovely to be here with you, because my nervous system feels very safe and welcomed by your nervous system. We've done this many times. So, you said we're old friends. I said we're family. We have that sense of connection. And so when I'm showing up here tonight, it's like, oh, I can take a breath for a moment, I'm with somebody who I trust, and it just feels, it feels safe and comfortable. And this that you and I have is what I would love for us to develop in our year of polyvagal theory with other people, the sense that, oh yes, we show up and the nervous system just feels welcomed, right? That ventral vagal welcome is what I call it.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, and I don't know, do you talk about it? It seems to be kind of responsibility that we have, really.
Yes, yes, and I was writing about that in a piece I was doing, that this is a big responsibility we take on when we begin to understand our nervous system,
Mm.
because no matter where we are, our nervous system is transmitting, is broadcasting cues of safety or danger. So if I'm regulated and feeling anchored in the world, I'm in that ventral state of safety and connection, I'm putting cues out into the world to every other nervous system that's around me. Whether I'm in a relationship with them or not doesn't matter. And those nervous systems are feeling those cues. The opposite is true as well. If I'm in a state of dysregulation, either sympathetic mobilization, fight, flight, or dorsal, going through the world without really being present doing it, I'm sending cues of danger out into the world. And other nervous systems feel that and have a response of their own, right? So even though if you and I had a rupture in our relationship, we could make a repair. I could email you and we could do this and we could make the repair. I was out in the world today. I went to the grocery store to stock up on things. And if I was in a dysregulated state going through the grocery store, I can't go back and make a repair with everybody who I broadcast a cue of danger to, right? And yet I do feel responsible for the next time I go out in the world to be anchored and to send those cues of safety, right? It's sort of a global repair because I can't make the one-on-one repair. And I think when you begin to really understand the power of your nervous system to offer regulation and a welcome to other nervous systems, then it does feel there's a weight to that, right? And I'm certainly not always anchored in ventral. None of us are, nor should we be. So it's not that I have to be perfectly anchored in ventral. It's just that recognizing, oh, now I am sending cues of safety. And oh, now I'm sending, cues of warning, right? And being able to um, then act on that, and that only comes from a place of knowing, right? People wander through the world dysregulated all over the place, and they don't recognize that all these other nervous systems are taking in that information. So, we're building knowing. Mm.
So it's more about flexibility of our nervous system
Mm. Yeah, perfect word. I love that word. Yes.
rather than being stuck in any particular state.
Right, right. Even stuck in ventral, even stuck in safety and connection, that's not a good thing. We want flexibility. I need to be able to go to a survival state when there's actual danger, right? And so that's good. What happens for many of our clients, and what happens for people when the world feels overwhelming, is we get pulled out of ventral into one of our survival states, either sympathetic or dorsal, and we get stuck there, right? We can't find our way back. I call ventral our home. So we get pulled away and we can't find our way home to ventral, right? So we're lost. We can't find our way home. And this way of working through polyvagal theory is just offering us the guide. How do you find your way home? And there are lots of ways to come home to ventral. We're going to explore many of them, but we need that roadmap. We need to know, how do I get home to ventral? Because when we are stuck in survival, we suffer. Both physically, our physiology has a response. We have lots of different kinds of diseases. And our psychology, we have lots of mental illness when we are stuck in dysregulation.
Absolutely. Okay, Deb, so you kind of given a nice overview, and the three organizing principles are hierarchy, noroception, and co-regulation. So we might talk a little bit about what the polyvagal looks like. Certainly when you're in a role as a therapist, but certainly not even that. It's even kind of a lot more broad than that, is what you're saying. It's when you're in a relationship, when you're in a relationship with your children or your partner,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and one of the things I think you do a really good job with is you kind of demystify therapy.
Mm, mm.
What I see you talking about is that you really educate clients about the nervous system, and you really kind of take them on a journey,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
you don't make therapy a mystery anymore. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. Yes, I love the way you just said that. I think therapy should not be a mystery. I watched many master clinicians work, and there's a brilliant outcome, and yet I have no idea how that happened, right? I want my clients to understand what we're doing and how we're doing it. I would like them to become active operators of their own nervous system, is really what I say. So that's one of the goals. And I loved what you said, a journey. What I tell my clients is we're going on an autonomic journey. And I have no idea where it's going to take us today, but we're taking ventral with us, so it's okay. Because as long as you have enough ventral anchoring, safety connection in the room, wherever we go is going to be fine. And that for me really is the polyvagal change that happens, because when we get pulled to sympathetic mobilization or dorsal immobilization as a survival response, historically we've gone there by ourselves and we get stuck there. And so with my clients, I'll say, let's go together. I'm going with you, because the terror about a survival response is you're stuck there all alone. And so you have to figure this out all on your own. So if I go with you, if my ventral goes with you, when we bring a different energy together, the experience already changes. So without having to process anything, the experience is different for a client. And I have discovered that many clients resolve experiences that have been stuck without us ever having to do anything with them, because the nervous system has this new experience, um, that disconfirming experience, right? Of oh, there's a different energy, there's ventral here, there's somebody else here, I'm not alone, right? And that's a beautiful experience for a nervous system. That's what the nervous system's looking for, right? So that really, is one of the things. The other thing I do, our clients come to us with a presenting problem, right? They come to us with a diagnosis, which I tend to not want to look at, and a presenting problem, which I then ask them, could we put that over here on the table next to us? Because the presenting problem is really an outcome of a dysregulated nervous system. And so my work with my clients is to say, let's regulate the nervous system. Let's help you learn how to operate this essential system. And then we'll take that problem back off the shelf and we'll bring it here between us and we'll look at it again. And we're going to know what to do with it in a very different way, because your system is going to give us that information. And that information can only come from a regulated nervous system. That's when there are options that we can explore in stories that can happen. But as long as you're in survival, you are stuck in one story. So
Yeah.
we can't work with that problem. So I love to do that. And clients are usually really willing.
Yeah.
They'll say, what do you mean? That's what I came for. And I said, I know, but give me a chance. Right. And as soon as they begin to play with their nervous system, they go, ooh, huh. You get that curiosity, and then it's beautiful. Right. Then we're all in together. So
Yeah.
so that's yeah.
So this kind of leads us on nicely. You have a kind of a famous saying, I think, at this stage, and the quote is, "Story follows state."
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and for many of us, we therapists we love story, right? Humans love story. We're story making, meaning making beings. So of course, I love story. I work in words. I write. I love story, and story is the outcome again of a dysregulated nervous system. Then the system sends the information to the brain, and then the brain makes up a story to make sense of what's going on in the body. And so we often want to enter into the experience with our clients at story. But story is that emergent property of the state. And so we're fighting the state. So if we instead enter in at state, regulate the state, the story is automatically going to change. So for those of us who've been trained in many models that are more top down, where we
Mm.
want to, change the state, have a different story, have a different thought, different feeling. My invitation to people is to what if we put that aside and if we went underneath the story to the state and change the state and then see what arises from that change in state. Because
So,
I do tell my clients, I say, whenever we get in a fight with the nervous system, if the brain and the nervous system are fighting, the nervous system's going to win every time. So let's not have that fight, right?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I think a real kind of takeaway for people tonight is that state supports story,
Mhm.
which is both a good thing and a not so good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, because if we think about, let's talk about hierarchy for a minute, because we didn't really dive in there. We have three major states. We've got a lot of blended states too, and we've got flavors of every state. But if we just take the three discrete states, that sympathetic, mobilized, fight, flight, survival state, the stories that emerge from there have to be stories about being in danger in some way. The world's dangerous, people are dangerous, I have to keep myself safe. And they're stories of anxiety or anger, right? Because your biology has taken you to that place. And then in dorsal, which is the other survival state, the state of collapse, disconnect, sort of just going through the motions, not really here. The stories there have to be ones of being of hopelessness and despair and alone and lost, right? Because that's where your biology has taken you. And it's only from ventral, that place of safety and connection, self-regulation and co-regulation, that the stories can be one of possibility and hope and change, right? So that's why we say state creates story, because out of each state there are only certain stories that can emerge, because those are the emergent properties. That's what we say. This is what your state supports. This is what your biology supports. And I did want to say in ventral, we talked about connection. Ventral, which is that place of safety and connection, where the newest part of your nervous system is regulating all three states. Connection goes through four pathways. We can connect to ourselves, or for our people who are IFS therapists like me, we can connect to ourselves, right? All our parts inside. We can connect to others. So you and I are doing this. We can
Mm.
connect to the world around us, and we can connect to spirit. And those four connections are only available to us when we are anchored in ventral. Yeah.
I think one of the things that you've done again a great job of, Deb, and I know we're going to talk a lot more about in the year is I think and I've been very appreciative of this, is that you really normalized the dorsal state, because
Yeah.
it seems to me that the dorsal state gets very coupled with shame.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think you doing what you're doing right now, and the trainings you're doing, and the area you're doing, I think that's probably one of your greatest achievements, is that you've really kind of let out the message that dorsal is okay. It's okay to be in dorsal.
It's interesting you say that, because I get lots of emails from people around the world who talk to me about that, because I'm very open about dorsal, that we have two survival states, and over the course of our lives we have what I call a profile, an autonomic profile that develops. So we have ventral as everybody's home, because I think our nervous system inherently longs to be in ventral and knows how to get there. So that's the first thing we want to remind ourselves and our clients, that your nervous system knows how to find the way home. We're just reminding it when we're doing this work together. But then we have a home away from home. And I know I've talked to you a lot. I tell when I'm teaching forever, my home away from home is dorsal. right? So when I get when the world is too much, I go through sympathetic because it's a hierarchy: ventral, sympathetic, dorsal. So you have to go through sympathetic to get to dorsal. I joke, I say I take the express elevator, right? I don't really stop, I just go, right? So, but I go to dorsal, and dorsal is my home away from home, and I'm very comfortable there. I know it well. And so when I started working with clients, I call it autonomic credibility. Their nervous system, felt very safe with mine because it was like, oh, that's a nervous system that understands dorsal. Right?
Mm,
And dorsal is simply the other survival state, right? It's the place our nervous system takes us when everything is too much and we're trapped and there's no escape. And so things get dull, get fuzzy, get numb. Dissociation is the extreme of dorsal, but there are lots of flavors of dorsal that protect us. And when I started telling people, my home away from home is dorsal, you would not believe how many people would email us, -2, -2. And the thing about dorsal is we sort of fly under the radar, right? People who are sympathetically charged for their home away from home, they're kind of big in the world and they don't get away with it. You know when someone is incredibly anxious or angry because you see it, it's out there. But we dorsal dwellers, as I call us, kind of, we're inward, we're quiet, we can be overlooked, so that's both the risk and the benefit. The benefit is people don't always know that I'm suffering. It's
mm.
also the risk because I'm here all on my own suffering, so yeah, just bringing the three states into they're normal. We all go through all of these states, and some of us spend more time in sympathetic and others of us spend more time in dorsal. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think what we're talking about that is, when we're in relationship, and I imagine, and you can talk a little bit about this, that attunement looks different when someone is in dorsal
Mm.
versus when somebody is in sympathetic.
Yeah, so if you and I are working and you go to sympathetic, I'm going to be anchored in ventral, but I'm going to bring my energy so that I can meet you in sympathetic. Because if I'm in my very quiet therapist place, oh, Liam, I can feel the sympathetic energy. Your system's going to say something I can't say on camera, and it's going to think, oh, she doesn't understand me at all, right? But
Yeah.
if I meet you, wow, I can feel all that energy. Tell me more, right? Your system, gets the sense that, oh, we're matching manage energy in a better way. In dorsal, you need me to come next to you, come be with you in a quiet way where I can strongly let your system know that I'm here with you and I'm anchored in ventral and I'm going to be here as long as you need before we begin to regulate again and not overwhelm you, right? So it's a very different presentation on the part of the therapist to meet the nervous system where it is. And then in sympathetic, you're overflowing with energy, but it's chaotic, disorganized energy. My job is to help you organize that energy so that you can continue to come to ventral, bring that energy with you to ventral. So one of the things I never tell my clients is calm down, right? Because for me, that's the wrong direction. It's a hierarchy. If we're in sympathetic, I want you to organize the energy and come up to ventral, right? I don't want you to go down to dorsal. And when people in sympathetic are told to calm down, that there often is a response of energy being stifled and going to dorsal, right? So it's the wrong direction. If you're in dorsal, I want to help you bring just a tiny flavor of sympathetic mobilizing energy in so that we can together begin to bring that energy and climb our way back to ventral. So
Yeah,
very different, which is why it's so helpful for me to understand where you are. And in order to do that, you have to understand where you are, right?
absolutely. So would it be true to say that when somebody is in sympathetic, what their nervous system is looking for is an alliance?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
what
yeah. I think we're always looking for an alliance because we're built to be in connection with other beings, right? It's just in sympathetic. It's harder for other people to be in alliance with us, because we're exploding with all this energy, which is disorganized, and we can feel we're sending out cues of danger when we're in sympathetic. So if I'm your therapist and you're in sympathetic, I have to be able to take those cues of danger and hold them with you, so that you're not pushing me away and they're not getting in. I'm holding them with you, so that we can then both together come back to ventral and then reflect on what that was. So yeah, it's an alliance. It's a different kind of alliance than the alliance we have in dorsal. I think in sympathetic, where are we going? I'm going with you. Where are we going? It's that kind of an alliance. And in dorsal, it's more of I'm right here and I know the way home to ventral, and I can help us make that journey when you're ready. So I'm more of a guide there, and I'm more of a going with and sympathetic. And then when we arrive in ventral together, it's, we're here together. Now let's really connect and explore.
So as you talk, two thoughts come to me. I think one of the things that seems to be relevant is that if I'm with somebody in dorsal, it seems really important to hold an invitational space.
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's very hard for we therapists, right? To have a client in dorsal and go be with them and not feel the need, the pull in our own system to pull them out of dorsal, right? But just to be with, because I guarantee you that the system is going to move out of dorsal at some point. If I can really sit with and have my client, can you feel my nervous system right here with you? Right. And that is the sort of language that I use with my clients, because my clients are going to be speaking polyvagal with me. They have mapped their system. So I'll say, Mike, I'm right here with you. Can your system feel my ventral here with you? Right? Because if I go to the brain, remember the brain's offline by then. By dorsal, the brain's offline. Sympathetic, probably a little bit still there, but it's not thinking clearly. Right? So I don't want to talk to the brain, because it's not there for me to talk to. I want to talk to the nervous system and really let the nervous system know you're not alone. I'm here. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of makes sense that when you're working with somebody in dorsal, that your presence is much more important than your competence.
Yes. If you can do nothing else, and we practice this when we do some of the exercises and skills, it's the power of ventral to make magical things happen. And I can't even explain it sometimes, but when you have the experience of being dysregulated and someone shows up with a regulated nervous system offering you ventral energy with no demand to do anything and no suggestion about what to do, but just there with ventral, it is a powerful experience. So yes, I would take a therapist or a friend or a partner who can just be in ventral and be with me, over someone who is trained in every model there is and can do the model well. Because it's not about that. It's about regulating and showing up with that regulated energy first before the models, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems to make sense that we in the relationship, in the therapy room, there needs to be more cues of safety than cues of danger for the client or for us to go into ventral.
Yeah, and I use the safety danger equation is what I call it. And it really is that the cues of safety have to outweigh the cues of danger in order for us to connect and therapy to happen. As soon as the cues of danger outweigh the cues of safety, therapy stops. And you know it when it happens. Your client gets stuck, the thing you were doing stops, you kind of don't know where to go. And it really is because of the cues of danger are now outweighing the cues of safety. And I say outweigh rather than outnumber, because one cue of safety can regulate several cues of danger. Like your smiling face and connection is a cue of safety that can overcome for me several environmental cues of danger. Right? For other people, it's different. But what I do, I divide a paper in half, and my client and I are going to begin to identify what's the cue of danger that just came in and interrupted what we were doing. And we begin to list the cues of danger. Equally important is to identify the cues of safety. What are the cues of safety that are here or that we might bring in, right? Because the nervous system only regulates and comes to well-being when you work with both cues of danger to reduce or resolve them and actively experience cues of safety. That's a both and that we have to have in our nervous system to come to those three words: health, growth, and restoration.
Okay, brilliant. Then we're just going to pause for a second because I'm getting a few messages. Robert, would you put the link up for a polyvagal year? There's a few people want to book next year's training and they're having some problems accessing it. So if you put that up there, please, Robert. So I have about 1,000,001 thoughts, Deb.
Oh boy. And I noticed we have a bunch of Q&A too.
Yeah. So maybe two quick questions, last quick questions, and then we'll go into the Q&A.
Sure.
So what you're saying, so I think one of the things that's very interesting is that somebody in Dorsal, and I think it's your home away from home, certainly mine, and someone in Dorsal, of course, can look kind of cool, calm, and collective. They can, a bit like the duck under the water. There can be so much happening inside. So it seems that stillness, calmness, it's a complicated state.
Stillness is a blend, is one of the autonomic blends that we've identified, and I think is the most complicated state for the nervous system to come into because it involves your dorsal vagal system of immobilization, so we can be still, connecting with your ventral vagal system of social engagement and connection so that we can be safe. And the two of them have to work together. The problem is that when we begin to move from action to quiet, when we begin to become still, the nervous system often feels cues of danger and takes us to shut down instead. And so especially for those of us whose home away from home is dorsal, when we begin to become quiet, shutdown can come rather than stillness. Now, solitude, which is a form of stillness, solitude, I think is incredibly important for humans. We need enough experiences of solitude and stillness and safety in those places, as well as being social. So, stillness is complicated, and it's one of the things that I work with my clients in tiny moments. Let's have a moment of stillness together. And in order for me to be still with my client, I have to know how to be still with myself. I have to be able to sit in companionable silence with my client and not have my brain start thinking, oh my God, what have I done wrong? What do I need to do next? What's happening? But just sit in that stillness together. Yeah.
Yeah, and we won't go into this now because it's a whole other webinar. So it really explains why sleep is a complicated process.
Oh, sleep is so complicated. Even if we just take the basics of stillness, in order to sleep, you have to become safely still, right? So because sleep is the most vulnerable position we're in, right? We're just totally, vulnerable to the world. We're still. So sleep is so impacted by the nervous system. I would also like to say, many people don't sleep with their partner or sleep with the person they love, because then we've got two nervous systems that are attempting to find stillness together. I know many of my clients would sleep in separate rooms, and one of their longings was to be able to sleep together, but the nervous system could not come to feeling safely still that way.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. So the last question,
So,
and you can give us a brief synopsis of this. How will a year of polyvagal support those who join us to become? How will it support them to become more polyvagal informed?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've designed the year so that we, start with, some intention setting. And what I would say is everything we do in these 12 months is based on the principles of polyvagal theory. So even setting intentions is, we do a process that is based on the autonomic nervous system, not the brain. So everything we do is going to give you a polyvagal lens to look at setting intentions, at creating patterns of connection, at bringing compassion to your patterns of protection, to looking at intense emotions through the nervous system. I hope, my hope is, and this is an experiment. We're experimenting with this together, but my hope is, when we reach the end of the year, that we have a true community of people who speak polyvagal fluently, and are moving through the world, seeing the world through the lens of the nervous system. That's really my goal, is to look and see through the lens of the nervous system, so that in the world that I'm living in right now, that is so I don't know, there's so much in the us and them category. I can look across at another person who is in what my brain would say the them category, but I can look through the lens of my nervous system and say, wow, that is a nervous system that is dysregulated, and it's dysregulated in this certain way, right? That doesn't mean I'm not going to hold them responsible for their behaviors, or I'm not going to have thoughts about it, but at least I know where the behaviors are emerging from. And then if I wanted to have a conversation, I would know how I could enter in. So I'm hopeful that at the end of this year, we will have created a community of people who are able to engage with the world in a new way, because I think that's what our world needs. We need people who move through the world differently and send signals of safety and welcome to the world around them. And then that begins to ripple out, and we begin to do it differently. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So there's a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we won't have time for them all. So would you like me to pick out a few, Deb, or would you like?
Go for it.
Okay. Great.
Let's play polyvagal bingo. You pick out the ones you want.
Okay. Okay. So this question is from Donal. Hello, Donal. Deb, can you speak to the role of polyvagal in the overarching spectrum of addiction, trauma, and dissociation, if you get space?
Yeah. I think if we look at any of those, let's look at addiction or substance use, right? Again, substance use is a symptom of a dysregulated nervous system, right? It's one of the ways the nervous system is trying to find its way to ventral. It's not getting there, and we know that, but we can look at the nervous system and say it is reaching. It is using drugs, alcohol, shopping, eating, whatever the addiction is, to attempt to regulate the nervous system. So if we start from that, then we begin to say, if we can help regulate the nervous system, then these behaviors are going to change. And as they change, we can begin to work with them differently. So for me, it's always a both and. Someone can come and I can work with them in an active substance use, because I'm going to help them regulate their nervous system, and then we're going to see what happens with the behaviors. So, whether it's substance use, whether it's any other kind of addiction, whatever it is, if we just keep going back to that is the system that's dysregulated in a certain way, and these behaviors are the way the nervous system is attempting to find its way to safety.
Okay, great. And I think one of the things that the polyvagal theory does really well, Deb, is, when I grew up, and I'm sure you were the same, we looked at behavior as being good or bad.
Yeah.
But now we can really see the organic intelligence of behavior.
Yes. Yeah, and I love the nervous system makes no moral meaning or assigned motivation. It simply acts. And when we look through the lens of the nervous system, what that person is doing is not good or bad. It's simply dysregulated. So I can look and I can say, and we all do this. We have clients that say, oh my God, my client is so needy, right? That's my nervous system feeling pulled and getting dysregulated, and I'm giving it a label, needy, when it's really another nervous system that has not have enough self co-regulating experiences and keeps reaching out to me to co-regulate, right? Or if we go back to substance use or those behaviors, we say, oh, they're not trying hard enough, right? Or they haven't found rock bottom yet. Or if they wanted to, they could, right? That's our brain making meaning about a nervous system that is simply feeling too many cues of danger and not enough cues of safety, right? Beginning of my career, I worked with people who had sexually abused, right? And again, it's a terrible way the nervous system acted. It's a behavior that came out of a dysregulated nervous system, and if we can help the nervous system regulate, then that's the road back to safety and well-being for everybody, right? So again, it's looking through the nervous system and saying, what does that nervous system need in this moment to find its way to ventral, right? That's one of the guiding questions. The other guiding question is, first, what does my nervous system need in this moment to be anchored in ventral so that I can be a regulating influence for my client or my partner or my child or whoever it is, right? So first it's me, and what does that nervous system need? I have to be curious about that.
I just say this briefly. One of the things I love about Stephen Stephen Porges, and I really hope that he does join us next year, is that the way he looks at addiction, as a valiant attempt
Right.
to
Yep.
down regulate patterns of protection in the nervous system.
Yep.
In the really a compassionate way of looking at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can say, oh, that's a dysregulated nervous system doing that. Or we can really embody our own ventral and have compassion and curiosity for that other nervous system that is using that behavior to regulate. And there's a difference, right? Absolutely. And what we're going to do in this year is we're going to take pieces of the theory from here and we're going to move them here, because it's only from here that we can truly be that regulating being in the world.
Okay, great, Deb. So we have another question. It's from Sylvia. Hello, Sylvia. Can you speak a bit about freeze state and immobilization? I'd like to learn how to differentiate between freeze and dissociation for myself and for supporting clients better.
Yeah, there's so many nuances to this, aren't there? And when somebody asks about freeze, my next question, is usually tell me more. So if we think about freeze, we have this freeze that is a blend of sympathetic and dorsal, where we are filled with overwhelming energy, but dorsal is keeping us immobilized. That's we call that sort of that deer in the headlights freeze, where when your client or when yourself either is in that, the muscles are tense, the eyes are usually big, but you can't move, right? That's that blended freeze. And then we have the freeze, which was sort of the commonly stated freeze in the beginning of fight, flight, freeze, the freeze that's freeze with collapse. And the reason I'm frozen is that I don't have any energy in my system, so I can't move, right? Whereas the first freeze, I have too much energy and I'm stuck. The second freeze, I have no energy and I can't move, right? So it's that, and it's usually some sort of a collapse that goes with that. So those are the two different freezes. And then dissociation is just so fascinating with the nervous system. I think of dorsal as, I often call it the doorway to dissociation, because when you go to dorsal, the blood flow and the oxygenation of blood to your brain changes. So you have a state change of like you're in a different state. But once you've gone to that place, then you can have all sorts of different experiences. You can have a sympathetic part come on board. You can have another dorsal part. You can have a sort of the dorsal part that I often think about is the one that just going through the motions, but not really here. that flavor of dissociation where I'm sort of here, but not really, right? So again, it's dissociation. I think we're learning more and more about with the nervous system, because there's so many things that happen in our dissociated parts. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm just kind of conscious of the time, Deb. We have about 5 minutes left.
Sure.
I've had a look through the questions. So I think one of the themes that's coming up is that people have been really asking about other therapeutic modalities and
Mm-hmm.
how they fit in with the dorsal, or
Sure.
how they fit in with the polyvagal therapy.
Polyvagal, sure. Yep.
But,
Yep.
and I know one of the things I've often heard you say, that no matter what therapeutic approach you're using, that the polyvagal theory is a foundation or a
Yeah.
platform for all approaches. Could you
Yes.
say maybe a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, and I'm sure the people who are listening this evening are trained in wonderful models. There are so many models of therapy that are really wonderful and useful, and every model of therapy is working with the nervous system, is engaging the nervous system in some way. And so what I like to say is, if you become polyvagal informed, then you're putting the platform underneath that model of therapy. You're understanding the science that is either helping that therapy work better or is getting in the way of that therapy working with a particular client. So for me, polyvagal theory is not a competition to any other model. It's an addition to, it makes the other models understandable, makes them work better when we do understand. And, in fact, polyvagal theory is really not a model of therapy in and of itself, right? I've created a polyvagal guided approach, but it's not a model of therapy. So I do want people to understand that you're not going to learn a model of therapy in our year of polyvagal theory. You're going to learn an approach to living life, an approach to your work as a helping a professional. You're going to really learn, oh, this is how my nervous system works, and I can look out at the world and be curious and help other people understand how their nervous system works.
Great, thanks, Deb. I'm just sending a few answers to people there. So
I know you got lots of questions.
My apology for my biological rudeness.
You are biologically rude. Good thing I know what you're doing.
Okay, so great. I think we've I've really enjoyed tonight, Deb, and
yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on. And I didn't mention at the start, but you spent a little bit of time in hospital yesterday.
Yeah, and I will mention that today, because I'm sure there are people on this webinar with us who have seen me in many other different times, and I know from my inside out that I feel just a bit fuzzy, because I had yesterday I had a couple of procedures with different kinds of general anesthesia. And I'm always surprised at how the body holds that and doesn't quite, offload it. And so you and I had a conversation about, can we do this? I said, oh, I can do this. And I really have enjoyed doing it. I feel better. I actually feel better. I feel more connected to you. And there's also that little bit of fuzziness going on. So it's really a fascinating sort of experience for me. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Devin. I really appreciate you coming on after going through all that. And I would like to give a big thanks to Robert.
Yes.
And a big thanks to Mary, who was on the other side of the email. And Robert, you might put up, we're just getting some inquiries now again in about the link for the polyvagal year. So you might post that, please. And again, anybody that's interested in getting a CPD cert for this, you can purchase them. And again, Robert, please put up that link. And all I'd say is that I hope that anybody that's been on the call can join us next year, because we're really kind of very interested in creating a community of polyvagal informed therapists who can come together on a regular basis with a shared vision and we want to create something that's going to be really special.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to expending the next year with you, Deb.
I can't wait. It's going to be wonderful. Yeah. And thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. It's been really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And anybody has any questions about anything that we talked about tonight, or has any questions about the training or the CPD sort, feel free to give me an email. My email is liam, liam, @pcpsi.ie, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So good night for now, and I hope the presidential election goes well, Deb.
Yes, please. Hold us in your thoughts, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.